So, how Julio Iglesias transformed the Beatles' Hey Jude into something even Paul McCartney didn't expect. Paul McCartney had heard thousands of covers of Hey Jude by 1978. Every bar band, every wedding singer, every karaoke enthusiast had taken a swing at the Beatles' most beloved anthem. Most were faithful reproductions. Some were creative reinterpretations. All of them, in Paul's estimation, missed something essential. Then he heard Julio Iglesias' version, and he wept. London, 1978. Paul McCartney was in his home studio when his manager brought him a Spanish album that was tearing up the Latin American charts. "You need to hear this," the manager said, dropping the needle on track 3. What emerged from the speakers wasn't Hey Jude. It was Hey. The opening piano chords were there, McCartney's own composition. Instantly recognizable. But then came Julio Iglesias' voice, singing not in English, but in Spanish, transforming McCartney's message of comfort to young Julian Lennon into something deeper, more intimate, more vulnerable. Hey, don't be desilusiones más anymore. Paul listened to the entire 7-minute recording in silence. When it ended, he asked to hear it again. Then again. On the third listen, he finally spoke. He understood what I was trying to say better than I did. The story of how Julio Iglesias transformed one of the most iconic songs in music history begins not with permission, but with heartbreak. Madrid, 1969. Julio Iglesias was 26 years old, recently recovered from the car crash that had ended his football career and thrust him into music. He was performing in small venues, building a modest following in Spain, when he heard Hey Jude for the first time on Radio Madrid. He didn't speak English. He had no idea what the lyrics meant. But the melody, that achingly beautiful, building, cathartic melody, struck something deep inside him. He played the song over and over on his small record player, trying to understand what it was about the composition that made him feel so seen. A friend who spoke English translated the lyrics for him. The song was about comfort. About telling someone going through pain that it would be okay. About taking a sad song and making it better. Julio thought about his own journey. The crash, the hospital, the months of rehabilitation, the fear that he'd never walk again. He thought about the people who told him it would be okay when he didn't believe them. He thought about taking his own sad song, his broken footballer's dreams, and making it better through music. "I want to sing this," he told his friend, "but not in English, in Spanish, for people who need to hear it in their own language." But there was a problem. You don't just cover a Beatles song, especially not Hey Jude. The Beatles were gods. Their music was sacred. And by 1969, they were notoriously protective of their catalog. I investigated the licensing requirements. The news wasn't encouraging. Securing rights to cover a Beatles song required approval from the Beatles themselves, or at minimum from their publishing company, Northern Songs. The process could take months, years even, and there was no guarantee of approval. Just record it anyway, Julio's manager advised. Ask forgiveness, not permission. If they sue, we'll deal with it then. But Julio refused. If I'm going to sing this song, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it with their blessing. The formal request went to Northern Songs in London in early 1970. Julio Iglesias, an unknown Spanish singer, was requesting permission to record a Spanish-language version of Hey Jude. The request was unusual enough that it landed on Dick James's desk, the music publisher who'd helped launch the Beatles. James was skeptical. Spanish-language covers of English songs rarely worked. The rhythm of Spanish, the different syllable count, the different emphasis patterns, usually butchered the melodic structure. And Hey Jude was delicate. Its power came from the build, from the gradual emotional crescendo. Translate it poorly, and you'd destroy everything that made it special. But James had a soft spot for underdogs. And something about this Spanish kid's earnest letter, written in broken English, explaining how the song had helped him through his darkest days, moved him. "Give him a chance," James told his team. "But tell him, if he ruins our song, we'll bury him." Permission granted, Julio faced an impossible challenge. How do you translate "Hey Jude" into Spanish without destroying what makes it beautiful? The problem wasn't just linguistic, it was mathematical. "Hey Jude, don't make it bad" is 7 syllables in English. A direct Spanish translation, "Hey Jude, no lo hagas mal," is 8 syllables. That single extra syllable throws off the rhythm, disrupts the melody, makes the song stumble where it should flow. Julio worked with Spanish lyricist Ignacio Ballesteros for 3 months, trying hundreds of combinations. They couldn't just translate word for word. They had to capture the feeling while respecting the music. Finally, they found it. "Hey, no desilusiones más." Hey, don't be disillusioned anymore. It wasn't a literal translation. McCartney's original was about specific comfort to a specific child going through his parents' divorce. Julio's version was more universal, a message to anyone facing disillusionment, despair, loss. It was the same spirit, filtered through a different cultural lens. But the real innovation came in the bridge. McCartney's original built to that famous extended coda. Na 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 na, na 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 na, hey Jude. 4 minutes of pure cathartic release. Julio kept the melody, but added Spanish vocals over the na 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 sections, turning the coda into a conversation. No, no, no. No me digas que no. And finally, it was bold. It was possibly blasphemous. It was also brilliant. The recording session at CBS Studios Madrid in August 1970 was tense. Everyone knew they were playing with fire. This wasn't just any song. This was a Beatles song. Get it wrong, and the criticism would be merciless. Julio recorded 17 takes. On take 18, something clicked. His voice, smooth, emotional, vulnerable, carried the Spanish lyrics with a tenderness that honored McCartney's original, while creating something entirely new. The orchestration swelled at exactly the right moments. The coda built with the same cathartic power as the original, but with a distinctly Latin flavor. When the final note faded, the studio was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone. Julio's producer leaned into the talkback microphone. "That's the one. We just made history." The single was released in Spain and Latin America in October 1970. Initial sales were modest. Radio stations were hesitant to play a Spanish cover of an English masterpiece. But something strange started happening. People who heard it couldn't stop talking about it. In Mexico, a radio DJ played "Hey" and received more call-in requests in 1 hour than any song that month. In Argentina, it became the #1 requested song within 2 weeks. In Spain, even the Beatles fans, notorious purists, admitted that Julio's version had captured something special. By December 1970, "Hey" had sold over 2 million copies across Latin America. It had done something unprecedented, made a Beatles song accessible to non-English speakers without diminishing its power. But the real test came in 1978, when Paul McCartney finally heard it. Strong, the story of that listening session has been told and retold in music industry circles, with varying degrees of embellishment. But the core truth remains. Paul McCartney, who'd written "Hey Jude" to comfort 5-year-old Julian Lennon during his parents' divorce, heard Julio's version and understood that his song had transcended its original purpose. "When I wrote it," Paul later said in an interview, "I was thinking about one little boy in one difficult situation. When I heard Julio's version, I realized the song could speak to anyone, in any language, going through anything." He didn't just translate it. He unlocked something I'd put in there without fully realizing it. Paul called Julio directly, a conversation Julio would later describe as one of the most surreal moments of his life. "You honored my song," Paul told him. "You didn't just cover it. You understood it. Thank you." The impact of Hey extended far beyond sales figures. It opened the door for Spanish-language covers of English classics. It proved that translation, done thoughtfully, could enhance rather than diminish. It showed that music could truly be a universal language if you respected both the source material and your own cultural context. For Julio, it was a defining moment. He'd taken one of the most beloved songs by the most beloved band in history and made it his own without disrespecting its origins. It was a template he'd follow throughout his career, honoring what came before while creating something new. Years later, in 2008, Paul McCartney attended a Julio Iglesias concert in London. Backstage, the two men, now both in their 60s, both legends in their own right, embraced. "Are you going to sing it tonight?" Paul asked. "I sing it every night," Julio replied. "Your song saved my life once. I try to pass that gift forward." "It's not my song anymore," Paul said, smiling. "It's ours." That night, Julio performed Hey to a packed audience that included Paul McCartney sitting in the front row. When Julio reached the coda, "No, no, no, no me digas que no," Paul was singing along, phonetically approximating the Spanish lyrics he'd heard so many times he'd memorized them without understanding them. The moment was captured on someone's camera phone. Paul McCartney, author of Hey Jude, singing a Spanish cover of his own song, tears streaming down his face, transported by a version he'd initially never expected to exist. Strong. Today, Hey is considered one of the greatest Spanish-language covers of all time. Music scholars study it as a perfect example of cultural translation in popular music. Spanish-language radio stations still play it regularly, 50 years after its release. Multiple generations of Latin Americans have grown up with Julio's version as their introduction to the song. And whenever people ask Julio Iglesias about his greatest achievement, he doesn't mention his record sales or his sold-out stadiums or his hundreds of millions of albums. He talks about the phone call from Paul McCartney, about taking something beautiful and making it accessible to millions who might never have understood it otherwise. Hey Jude was a Beatles song. Hey is a human song. And somewhere in the space between those two versions, between Paul McCartney's English comfort to a 5-year-old boy and Julio Iglesias' Spanish embrace of universal heartbreak, is proof that great art doesn't belong to its creators. It belongs to everyone who needs it. Paul McCartney wrote Hey Jude in 1968. Julio Iglesias transformed it in 1970. And millions of people, in a language the Beatles never sang, found comfort in words they could finally understand. That's not just a cover. That's cultural bridge building. That's music doing what it's supposed to do, connecting human beings across language, across geography, across everything that tries to separate us. Two legends, one song. Infinite hearts touched. And the beautiful part, both men understood that the song was bigger than either of them. That's when you know you've created something eternal.